Welcome to the Be Yourself podcast.
Be yourself, be yourself, be yourself.
In control.
Brought to you from the hallways of Panther Lake Elementary School with your hosts, Mr. Baker
Music.
and Miss Lee. Kindergarten!
Never give up, never surrender.
All right, welcome to the Be Yourself podcast. We are here with,
Mr. Baker.
and it is Miss Lee speaking, by the way. This is our second episode, which
Episode
I'm
number
so
2.
excited about. And I think it might be a little more fun than the first episode because now I'm the interviewer.
And I'm the one answering questions.
Yeah, and okay, so the format of this is we're gonna ask Mr. Baker the same questions that he asked me on episode 1 about where he's from and how he grew up and how he viewed school and what he's like as a teacher right now. And then my favorite part, I've got some good questions for rapid fire. So let's start us off with, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Linwood, Washington, which is about 20 minutes north of Seattle. And I went to Hilltop Elementary from kindergarten through 6th grade, and then I went to Briar Terrace Briar Terrace Middle School for 7th and 8th grade, and then Edmonds Woodway High School. And then after high school, I went to Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma.
Go Lutes.
Yeah, go Lutes.
I know that. Sing.
You know that's a thing.
That's all I know.
That's all I remember from there, too. Except all the stuff I learned. Yeah, so that brought me to Tacoma, and the Puyallup area is where I live now, and then that's
The
where I
rest is
grew up.
history. Very cool. So never left Washington State.
I mean, I've been out of Washington.
Right, but not.
I've left, but not for more than a month. Actually, now that I think about it, I've never been out of Washington for longer than 1 month at a time.
Wow. It's time to move. Just kidding.
I like it here.
Yeah, I know. I love Washington. All right, well, what brought you to Panther Lake?
Mr. Maine brought me to Panther Lake.
Yes, I've heard so many great things about him.
That's because there's nothing but great things to say about him.
I hope he's listening to this.
He's definitely going to be listening
Hey,
to
Mr.
this.
Maine, we got to meet sometime.
I was, when I was a substitute teacher, because actually Mr. Maine told me, hey, Mr. Baker, they're having a job fair at Federal Way School District. And I was like, okay, I'll go there. And then when I got there, they're like, do you want to be a substitute? And I said, yes, I do. And then, so whenever I could come to Panther Lake and hang out with my friend Mr. Maine, I would come here and teach a class. I taught him Miss Putu's class a lot. Let's see, whose classes have I subbed for? I taught for Miss Putu. I taught for Miss Johnson. Who else is here? I taught for Miss Lippert, another 5th grade teacher, and Mr. Rumrow, who was a 5th grade teacher, and I taught for Mr. Williams and Mr. Van Balen in 4th grade.
I've heard of those names. Any primary?
Primaries, I did teach in Miss Reedy's 2nd grade class. I taught in Miss Sternberg's 2nd grade class. I don't think I substituted for Miss Meinert, though.
No kindergarten?
Um,
Come on, Baker. You got a 5-year-old.
No kindergarten. Well, I didn't at the time, but I did substitute in the music room after that.
Ooh.
So I did substitute for everybody eventually. But those were the classrooms I spent time in.
Got it. Which brings us to, how long have you been teaching?
Well, I was a substitute teacher for a semester. I started in about February. And that was 2 school years ago. Then last school year, I was a 5th grade teacher. And then this year, so this is my 2nd year teaching.
Very cool. We're twins.
We are. We started at the same school at the same time.
Yes. What made you want to be a teacher?
Well, I've always loved helping people to figure out like how to understand things, because I've always been good at understanding things. Like, things make sense to me pretty quickly, like when somebody explains it to me. And so I've always been able to kind of figure out what people needed to know to be able to understand something.
You're so good at everything.
I'm just, I
He's
guess.
really humble too.
But I think it started with, like, I always thought I was going to be a coach of some sort. Like, I love coaching, which is why I coach track. Starting soon, everybody. Keep an eye out for information. So I've always loved coaching, and just kind of being a coach and teacher kind of goes hand in hand. So it was like, oh, I'll probably be a teacher when I grow up. And then now I'm almost grown up, and I'm a teacher.
Almost. All right, super cool. What did you like about school growing up?
I loved reading.
Oh, opposites.
I was a reader. So I was basically my nose was always in a book. I was the kid that when I was in class and started to get a little bored, I'd pull out a book and try to hide it under my desk and read it without my teacher knowing. Which I found out when I became a teacher that the teacher knew. She was just not saying anything to me about it, I guess. But I would, even at home, like I would read at night, and my mom would come in and tell me to put my book away. I'd be like, oh, just let me finish this page. She'd be like, all right, hurry up. And she'd leave, and then I'd finish the page, and I'd be like, well, I want to know what happens on the next page.
You're the dream child.
Well, kind of. So I'd read the next, and then I'd read, like, she'd come in again and I'd say, well, let me finish this chapter. She'd say, hurry up. And then she'd finally come in and turn the light off. And then she'd go to bed. I'd hear her go to her room. And then I would turn the light on again and then start reading my book again. I shared a room with my brother, my younger brother. I don't know how he slept because I had the light on all the time reading at night. And I guess he just got used to sleeping with the light on.
He learned how to. That's really funny. Follow-up question. Did you enjoy writing? That's curious because I feel like I really hated reading, but I loved writing. But usually they say it comes hand in hand. If you like one, you usually like the other.
That's interesting.
I was the opposite.
I remember, I remember when I was in high school, I didn't like writing in class because I didn't like the format they were trying to make me, like when I had to write an essay.
Was it like timed?
No, but like
Oh.
the way they were teaching like a 5-paragraph
Paragraph
essay,
essay,
like
yeah.
the way they were teaching how to write it didn't make sense for me because I would just write it, but they were given like an outline and I didn't want to, so I kind of struggled with that. But then when I went to college, I actually got my degree in English writing. So
So you do like
so I
writing.
do like writing. It just took a while for me to be like, oh, okay, I do like to write, and then
Creative
I s-
writing's more your thing. Poetry, personal narratives.
I don't know. I kind of like expository writing, like essay writing.
Whoa, intense.
Kinda like
That's not what I like to write
Taking a
about.
subject and like just putting
Researching.
not the researching, but
Oh.
kind of like philosophically more kind of like, what do I think about this?
Oh.
And that's kind of actually how a lot of times I process, like, what do I think about this? The ideas are floating around in my head, and once I can kind of write them all out, I'm like, okay, that's like what I think about this. Like I can have it concrete and like, oh, now I got it all
We're
written
the
down.
same but so different. That is like what I don't like writing about. I loved writing about like personal narratives. Like think about one time that you blah 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 finish the sentence. And I like loved writing about
Nice.
personal narratives. All right, are you done with that? Writing? You could rant about writing, couldn't
I
you?
could write about writing all day.
Okay, what did you struggle with in school?
I actually had a hard time thinking of this because
You're so good at everything.
Miss Lee thinks I'm really good at everything. I don't know where that came from because I did not say that. But because I enjoyed school, and like it wasn't like when I went there, it wasn't a chore for me. Like I liked being there. But when you were talking in your podcast, when we recorded that one, podcast number 1 on our channel now, I remembered that I was not very good at doing homework. Like I had a really hard time doing my homework
We're opposites again. That's so funny.
because I would come to class like and I would understand things, and the homework was like giving us more practice and stuff, and I just wanted to be doing other stuff, and I wouldn't do a lot of the homework or I wouldn't turn it in or whatever. and I would pay attention in class, so I'd learn the subjects and do well on the tests because I was a good test taker, but I was just really poor at doing homework. So I got like mediocre grades because my test scores were really good, but my homework scores were not very good.
So homework.
Homework.
Not a thing. All right, so well, we know what reading was like for you, but how was math?
Math was interesting for me. When I was in middle school, I was in a lower math class. So I was taking like the class to help me get caught up with everybody else. And then my first year of high school too, I was in a pre-algebra class when everyone else was taking algebra 1, 2. So I was started off kind of a little behind, probably because I wasn't very good at doing homework. And so it took me a while to figure that part out. But by the time I got to my senior year, so I was in a math program that I didn't really like because it kind of, the way they were teaching it just didn't match up with me very well. So I just kind of found the class boring, and so I really struggled to like just stay focused and learn and stuff. But I had some other friends that were in it was a pre-calculus class. And I was looking at their work, and because of the stuff I learned in my class, I'm like, well, I think I know how to like do that kind of equation. I know how to do that. And so I was like, maybe I'll transfer into that class, and it'll be more of a challenge and like help engage my mind and stuff like that. Because I think the other class was just a little too easy for me. Like,
Right.
not because I'm great at everything, Miss Lee, but just because I was good at understanding once they explained it, but then
Yeah.
they'd kind of explain it more. And for some kids, that's really helpful. For me, I already got it, and I'm like, I'm ready to move on to the next thing. What other people are still trying to figure it out, and so the pre-calculus class was a class above where I was, but it was also a different system, so it kind of overlapped and
Right.
stuff like that. But
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy math growing up?
yeah, so once I got into that class, the freshman football coach was the head of the math department, so I talked to him about it, and he's like, okay, but like if you struggle, like you're stuck in there. So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna try hard, and I ended up having like the third highest grade in the class because I was like motivated to do well,
Determined,
because I'm
yeah.
like, I want to do well, and like, I want to learn the math, and so I did my homework, go figure,
Woohoo.
do my homework, get good grades.
Is that when you started enjoying it? When you realized you could do it?
I
Because
think
that's
so.
later. That's not until high school, right?
And oh yeah, because I think that was the first time where it was like it was really challenging, but it was, I don't know if it was the teacher or the level that where I was at, and
Or just
it
knowing that you could do it. And
yeah,
like,
it just
hard work
started.
actually
And you know
pays
what?
off.
That's when I started taking my physics class, which uses a lot of math, and so I was using the math to do like physics and like learn other stuff and be like, oh. Like now I'm learning this math, and it's helping me figure out where this ball is going to land when I shoot it out of a cannon and that kind of stuff.
Right.
Which that's what physics is, kids. It's really fun. Go do it.
So you're good at physics, you're good at math, you're good
I
at
said I
reading,
liked it. I
you're
didn't say
good
I
at
was good at it.
writing. What else aren't you good at? Nothing.
What aren't I good at?
Yeah.
Speaking Cantonese.
Down. Okay, we're gonna get into a question that's a little more serious. Did you ever face issues like bullying when you were growing up?
I did. When I was in, I want to say 4th or 5th grade. So growing up, I moved. I was in the same school. I moved like the other side of the school, but I lived in the same house from basically when I was a baby until about 6th grade. And that house had some other kids that were my age and my younger brother's age. Siblings. I'm the oldest of 4 children. I have 1 brother and 2 sisters. I didn't ask it. Miss Lee,
Oh.
this is episode 1.5 of the podcast. Miss Lee, how many siblings do you have?
I have one older brother who's 2 years older than me.
Okay, back to episode 2. We will get this all worked out, and it's going to be great. So we had kids that were mine and my brother's age, so we hung out with them a lot. And they had an older brother that I think was getting into like some gang type stuff where he was hanging out with some kids who were not following directions very well. And I remember one time I was riding my bike, and I just was passing him on the road, and he just slammed into me and like knocked me over into the ditch. And then like, I don't know why he did that. Yeah, he just was like, I can do that to you kind of thing. I was like, you know, I didn't really know what to, I got up and went home and just kind
How
of.
old are you?
I was 4th or 5th grade,
Okay.
somewhere in there. Maybe 6th grade, but around that same. No, it was so in 6th grade. So after I moved midway through my 6th grade year. So same school. Our new neighbors. There was the neighbor behind us, and then someone else just kind of around the corner up a hill, and they were friends. And I remember the one kid next door to me was like a lot smaller than me, and the one up the hill was a lot bigger than me. And they kind of teamed up and were like, for a couple weeks or something. Like I remember just spending my recess basically walking around to like avoid them, because they were like threatening they were gonna do something to me. I mean, I was really into sports, and they were not very athletic, and so like I think if they actually tried to like do something to me, like I think I would have been okay because I can defend myself. But I just remember like just wanting to avoid the conflict, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna walk around or that kind of stuff. The kid's older sister, one time, I just remember this. So I was on the bus. They were throwing orange peels at me the whole bus ride home from school, just like throwing them at me. And I basically just like collected them, and then when I got off the bus, just threw them in the garbage and went home, because I'm like, I'm not going to get involved in any of this. Well, then his sister told the bus driver that I called her a bad word name, and I had not said anything to them. So like, they, you know, the school called my parents, and like my parents like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know, I didn't do any of that. And I'm like, they were throwing. So I don't know, I don't remember what ended up happening with that, but it's just, yeah, it's just like no reason. I don't know what was going on, but
This stuff is real. And is it as serious? It's crazy how serious it is, because you still remember like such specifics of it.
yeah, like I remember the day. I mean, I remember the weather on the day, because it was like, it was just like my brain could tell like this is not normal. Like this is weird.
Yeah.
That like these kids were throwing orange peels at me. Like what? So my brain is like trying to figure out like what's going on. You know.
Yeah. Your words and actions do affect people
Yeah.
so much. Well, thank you for sharing that, because it is serious and something that we should be able to talk about. On a lighter note, what did you do for fun as a kid?
I played sports.
Yes.
I still remember being 7 years old, and we drove past the Edmonds Boys and Girls Club and saw kids practicing football. And I asked my dad, like, hey, what's going on over there? And he said, well, it looks like football practice. And I said, can I play football? And he looked into it, and he said, well, you got to be 8. It's like, okay. So my birthday's in April. So on April 13th of 1994, no, that's not right.
Not so good at math after all.
1, 6, 7, 8, 9.
He's using
92,
his fingers, everyone.
yes,
He's
I'm
using
using-
his fingers, everyone, just to let you know.
I'm using manipulatives to help me, because that's okay. So in April 13th of 1992, I turned 8, and I said to my dad, can I play football now? And he's like, well, you have to wait till the fall, because it's not football season in April. And so that fall he signed me up. So I played football from when I was in 3rd grade until I played 1 year in college with Mr. Main at PLU.
Oh my gosh.
I played soccer for 1 year. I played basketball for a long time. I played baseball up until 6th grade. I've been playing golf and tennis with my dad.
I want to get
all
into
growing
golf
up.
so badly.
It's fun.
I really think I would be a professional golfer in another life. Like, I fully,
You could be a professional golfer
wholeheartedly
in this life, Miss Love.
believe that with my, like, oh my gosh, my friends can tell you all about that, but that's another story. Okay, keep going. Other sports.
Yeah, so for me, like, especially once I got into high school, I was playing sports 3 hours every day, because either with practice or when it wasn't during the season, I would just go to the gym after school and play basketball. I loved sports, which was basically what I would do instead of my homework when I was supposed to be doing. I'd go play stuff. Yeah.
Word of advice, everyone: do your homework, then go to sports
Because-
practice, or do it right after you get home. From
Well,
your
I had a
practice.
lot of friends and kids on the football team in high school that couldn't play football because they didn't do their homework and didn't have good enough grades, and so they liked football just as much as I did, but they couldn't do it because they didn't have the grades for it. So I did do enough to get by. I just didn't do enough to actually learn it as good as I could have.
But then that changed when you took your math class and you realized, wow, if I put the work in, then I can really, really succeed. Okay, this is the fun question for me, my favorite question. What do you do for fun now?
What I do for fun now, I have a wife and 2 kids, and a dog, and so we spend time together at home. I like to wrestle with my dog a lot. I love playing music. I go home a lot, and I have a piano, and I have my guitar, or I'll just put on something. We'll have a little dance party. I would like to be playing more tennis, but Mr. Maine is never available. Which
I'm
is,
trying to take up tennis. Maybe we can
Okay.
play tennis. That came up last weekend with my friend, actually. Okay, go
Nice.
on.
But so I like playing sports. I've done that a lot. I'm researching a lot of videos right now on what airplane I should buy. Because this summer I'm going to buy a remote controlled airplane.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a real
No.
life airplane.
I do want to get my pilot's license though, eventually. I've been watching videos on that too. I've always wanted to be a pilot since about 7th grade.
Do you have 20/20 vision?
No, but I have correctable to 20/20 vision.
Oh, I
which is
thought you
what need.
had to have natural.
And actually, I think for a Class 1 medical license, it's only 20/24 that you need, which is what you need for your private pilot's license. I've been researching this a lot
Whoa,
lately
whoa, whoa.
because I'm really interested in doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah. What do
Okay,
you like
okay.
to do for fun? He's a pilot. That's what pretty much he is. That's what he does for fun. Okay, my favorite part, rapid fire. Are you ready for these
I
questions?
don't know.
I know. Okay, the first question is, this kind of came up in my kindergarten class today, and I didn't know what it was. Do you know what an alicorn is?
An alicorn? I feel like I should know what an alicorn is, but I do not. What is it?
So my kids, my kindergartners, convinced me that it was an animal, like a unicorn, and they went this whole long rant, but
Is
it was
an
great.
Alligator unicorn mix?
No, but it's great because we're learning persuasive writing, how to convince someone to do something. They fully convinced me that this was an animal. No, I went home and I researched it. It is just the horn of a unicorn. But did they convince me? Absolutely.
Nice.
So okay. Maybe now everyone will know what an alicorn is. Breakfast for dinner or dinner for breakfast?
Breakfast for dinner, always.
Yes, I agree. What do you think is something that is really popular now, but in 10 years everyone will look back on and be embarrassed by?
Pokemon Go. Because there's still people playing Pokemon Go.
I think it's funny. Embarrassed, though?
I don't know. I
I
mean,
guess, when you're, like, facing your phone at something.
when you think about, 'cause I have a neighbor that's really into it, and like he had like his best friend come down from Bellingham, and they spent like an afternoon walking around playing Pokemon Go. And I mean, it was for like the hanging out together,
Funny,
being
but
together. But
embarrassing.
it's like, I don't know. I just look at that and I'm like, that's so silly.
You know what my initial thought was? Flossing.
Yeah,
It's
you
like-
know, that is something.
It's like a cool dance move, but in
Uh-huh.
10 years, you're going to be like, what? Like, those are some stiff arms. What's with your hips? Why is it
Yeah.
looking like that?
I could totally see that. I'll agree with you.
All right. Taco Bell or Burger King? Kind of hard.
Burger King tastes better, but Taco Bell is cheaper, so I think it's a tie.
See, that was really hard for me, too.
In college, Taco Bell, 100%.
I
But
agree
now
with
that I have
one.
kids and I think more about like nutrition, I'm like, what's the healthiest unhealthy food I can
My
serve
dad
for
always
dinner.
says a burger hits all the finish my sentence. Nutritional
requirements.
Like there's carbohydrates because of the bread, there's protein, meat, you got your vegetables, lettuce, onions, fruit, tomatoes.
See, I eat just plain
Oh,
cheeseburgers.
so never mind. That doesn't apply to
But pizza does all that as well. And I love
you.
pizza.
You like tomatoes.
I don't like tomatoes, but I like
But the sauce.
The sauce.
I didn't have this question, but being from outside a state, I had never known what taco time was until I came here. So Taco Bell or Taco Time?
I really like taco time, but I can't eat it very much because I think like whatever the type of salt they use or whatever, like it's either too salty or something. So like if I'll eat taco time, I'm like, this is really good. But then if I have it again like a couple weeks later, I'm like, I don't know, this is like a little much.
Yeah. So Taco Bell, your answer? Or Taco Time?
But the tater tots are so good at taco time.
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
can
go taco
make,
time.
really, you can
Taco
make those
time.
tater tots, I feel like. Just like, what is it,
Well, I
Ortega
can
tater
make
tots?
anything I buy at a restaurant. We're talking about what do you go out to buy. I'm gonna say taco time.
Oh, okay. And then your last question. This is kind of a very obscure, weird question that I saw and I thought it was funny. If peanut butter wasn't called peanut butter, what would it be called?
Chicken butter. I don't know.
I was trying to think. I was like,
Do you mean like if it was what it is
Smooth.
now, but we just named it something different? Okay. Can I not use the word peanut?
no. I just made that rule up right now.
Okay. Well, what was his name? Carver. George Washington Carver was a
Why?
George Washington Carver was a scientist that came up. I do know this.
You would know
He
this.
came up with like over 100 different uses for the peanut, but he called them. I think the name they used for them was goobers, so I would say goober butter.
Everyone, let's fact check this and everyone go on Google and
George Washington Carver.
I hope
I
it's
don't know if
goober.
it was 100. I don't know how many, but he came up with a lot of different uses. for the
goober
peanuts.
butter. I would think the butter would be not the thing we changed. Like, why butter? Butter,
Okay, goober slop. I don't know.
goobers.
Goober glue.
Goober glue. That's
Sticky?
catchy.
Okay.
Oh, I would totally. You want a goober glue sandwich? I like it. Great
Okay.
answer. I would have been like, brown paste. Okay, well, that wraps up episode 2 in the books.
Nice. This one was a lot longer. I'm looking at the clock, so that's all right. We don't
But
know
it's
how
okay.
long they're going to be. They're just going to be as long as they are,
Yeah.
and
And hopefully you like listening to this.
you can listen to it
because we like
until
recording
you
it.
give up wanting to listen to it.
But our next episode will be posted soon, so we hope that you are there for
Are
that
we?
one.
Can we announce it? Are we going to announce it? Or are we just
Yeah,
gonna
who our
make it a
next
surprise?
person is? I don't know. I think we should announce this one just to amp it up.
Okay, so our next guest for episode number 3 of the podcast.
Drum roll.
I don't know how that's going to sound on the microphone.
I
It might
hope
sound
sounds
really
good.
bad.
That's gonna sound great.
I have a drum right next to you, Miss Lee.
Oh my gosh! We're in the music room, by the way. Let's hear it.
Our next guest on the podcast is going to be Philadelphia's own Miss Kramer. So we'll be interviewing her in a very similar fashion, unless we change it before then. I don't know. We're kind of winging it, everybody, but so far it seems to be working. So
Yeah. So we will see you. Nope, not see you then. We will talk to you then.
you will listen to us then. I don't know.
All right, signing off. This is Miss Lee.
This is Mr. Baker.
Bye.
See you later.